Whew. Hello. Today I want to talk about something that I haven't talked about publicly, and that is that I am autistic. Predictably, some people just went, duh, obviously. And a lot of people are, for one reason or another, in disbelief. It might depend on how well you know me and how much you know about autism, specifically in people who were assigned female at birth or are perceived as feminine. Being undiagnosed is trauma. I had a lot of difficulties when I started school. I dealt with audio processing issues that left me really lost a lot of the time. I would have these really big stims that called attention to myself. Jumping, flapping, tapping, squealing, and I even had a teacher recommend that I be tested after a big stim I had one day. But it was in a rude, ableist way, not a compassionate, accommodating way. If you watched my cognitive dysfunction video, I talked about some of my neurodivergence and how even then it felt incredibly vulnerable to talk about because of ableist abuse I'd experienced as a child. It incited my internalized ableism around proving them wrong, and it was long-lasting. I had such a hard time socially when I was really young. I would isolate a lot, and then when I was encouraged to make friends, I wasn't great at making them. And that's putting it very nicely. I was kind of loud and obnoxious and didn't know when to stop talking. I never realized how loud I was being. So if/when I did make friends, I would get so clingy and had such people-pleasing behavior because I was dealing with ableism and abuse both at home and at school, and I felt so desperate for their companionship. At some point, I literally consciously thought, enough. I'm tired of people making fun of me and not getting their jokes and people thinking I'm weird. And I literally studied people to try and behave more like them. Psychology and social etiquette basically became my special interests because I felt that if I could conquer my social inadequacies, then people would be my friend. People would stop calling me annoying and taking advantage of my naivete and treating me cruelly. Now, I have the language for it. I thought conformity was the solution to ableism. But back then, I just thought, how do I fix myself so people stop being so mean? And I guess that worked for a while, in a way. I forced myself to learn how to make better eye contact, even though it caused me tremendous anxiety and pain to do it. How to hide my stims, learn social scripts so I got along with people better. I learned to read into the things people said because they often wouldn't say what they meant. To this day, if you ask me, how are you? I will still take it literally and go into an immediate existential crisis. How am I? And then lay it all out on the table. But sometimes I do manage to stick it to the greeting intention and just say, fine, and you? But it just feels so wrong. I also hate it when people say I'm fine when they're not. It's so confusing. Do you want me to ask again? Do you want to be left alone? Sometimes I will just plain not see that anything is wrong. And I'll trust it. I'll take you at your word. And I'll miss it. And that's gotten me into trouble too. I learned that all this studying and practice was me learning how to mask. And it was exhausting. And through these efforts, while to everyone else I seemed to be functioning very well, I developed tremendous anxiety about whether or not I was humaning right. I managed to build this figurative masking muscle, so people couldn't really tell that I was autistic based on my behavior, while still going through so much strain internally. And Christ, it ultimately left me with this awful anxiety disorder, which I also mask. That is also not really visible from the outside. And if people didn't like me, if I made someone mad or annoyed them, or I missed a social cue, or I believed them when they said they were fine and wasn't supportive in their time of need, or in general did anything wrong socially, I would feel like such a failure. I would feel so guilty. I would feel so worthless, and I would spiral in these toxic, intrusive thoughts about how everyone hates me and I'll never successfully participate in society or make genuine friends, and so on. Taking off the mask and how autism impacts me. Fast forward to me hitting a low point in my physical chronic illness, which is Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, or EDS. And actually, there are a growing number of studies looking at autism as a comorbid condition of EDS, or vice versa. So that's worth checking out if you haven't. And it was when I got really sick and lost a lot of my mobility that led me to spend most of my time at home and isolated. So masking is basically performing function or presenting function in a way that camouflages your neurodivergent traits. Hope I'm saying that right. So along with masking autistic traits, I am also constantly masking anxiety traits. I experience anxiety a lot. An amount that I am embarrassed to admit, because I very successfully mask it. People do not typically perceive me as an anxious person at all. I am very, very good at masking. I've trained my whole life to do it. So by telling people, it makes me feel vulnerable about whether or not people are now scrutinizing my behavior to figure out whether I am anxious or not. I'm scared of that vulnerability being taken advantage of, and I worry about people that might think that I'm fake because I don't wear my anxiety on my sleeve. Masking takes a lot of energy, and it's kind of like a muscle, and it needs exercise. When I was going to school every day and going to work every day, I was able to interact with people on a daily basis, and so I got to practice or exercise my masking abilities. But when I became isolated, I kind of lost some of that muscle and felt myself start to not be able to control whether or not I exhibited a certain trait. People will tell me to this day that they cannot notice a difference, but I can feel it internally. I notice every detail. I feel it when it's torture to look someone in the eye, and I will still try my best to do it anyway, because I know that not doing so has a lot of bad interpretations. I feel it when I info dump, and I can't stop myself from talking, even if I can slightly notice people becoming tired of me. I sometimes get so fatigued that my facial and vocal expressions go flat, and the lack of enthusiasm makes people feel like I don't care about what they're saying, and it hurts people's feelings sometimes. Like an example would be how even recently my mom told me something that was great news, and so I congratulated her, but my voice and my face were flat because I was burnt out. And so she took it personally and said sarcastically, "Wow, you seem to really care." And that was kind of upsetting for me because I just really didn't have the energy to bring it out in my face or in my voice. Sometimes I don't know how to say things in the right tone just because I haven't heard it said in a variety of tones. Kind of like people who don't know how to pronounce something because they've only ever read it before. An example phrase is, "I've never seen it before. I don't know what that is." And I've struggled to find the right tone. And thankfully, I have a musical ear to make sense of stuff like that, so that it comes out more neutral and genuine instead of elitist and cold. I've never seen it before. I don't know what that is. And I've never seen it before. I don't know what that is. Communicate two very different things. And I've really struggled with that one. Because I don't know what a lot of things are. Socializing with people feels like constantly trying to speak a language that you barely know. Have you ever tried that before? It's hard. It takes a lot of concentration and effort. And I think a lot of people misunderstand the autistic trait of having difficulty communicating when really that is just under the social cognition umbrella. Social cognition is how people process, store, and apply information about other people and social situations. And I think that is really the trait autistic people have in common. It really feels like a lose-lose situation sometimes. If I am exhibiting my autistic traits, what often happens is that there are misunderstandings and I tire people and they become annoyed with me. But then if I successfully mask and people don't see my autistic traits, then people assume that I'm okay. They take for granted how easy it is for me to participate and for me to function. That feels very similar to my experiences with chronic pain. I'm in pain all the time, but I don't necessarily show it or verbalize it. And so people take for granted that maybe my pain is not so bad. But that's not really how it works. I started to feel like basically I was in another closet. And if you've never been in the closet before, you may not know that it is just high anxiety all the time. I was and still am constantly worried about humaning correctly. I struggled with anxious, intrusive thoughts after every social interaction. Worried if I said something wrong, worried that the person I interacted with was annoyed by me and I couldn't tell, super, super sensitive to anything I perceived as social rejection, like not being invited to something or feeling excluded from a conversation. And last year, I had a private sobbing meltdown in consequence of this rejection dysphoria. And when I came out of it, I decided, yeah, I need to see a therapist about this. So I started seeing a therapist who might actually be watching this. Hi! And we have talked endlessly about my experiences and how my brain works and how even though I mask very well and there is a huge lack of understanding of autism by the masses and how lack of representation in media as well as within autistic studies will give me imposter syndrome. Trust me. If you're sitting there looking at me thinking, you don't look or act autistic because you're comparing me to this guy and this guy and this guy and this guy, and maybe some autistic person you know in real life, there was a time in my youth where I might have agreed with you. I don't fit the stereotype and the highly visible cases of autism. My sister is also autistic, and her abilities and disabilities and mine are pretty different. The truth is, we still have so much more to learn about autism. The spectrum that we hear so much about is not linear. It's more like a giant graph. And it is wide and varied, and there is room for so many different kinds of people on the spectrum. Just about every session, my therapist affirms for me that I am autistic and that I have a right to claim it, a right to share and participate in my community, and to tell my story, because there are undoubtedly so many other people out there who feel the same way, who've experienced similar things. And that is a big driving force for why I decided to open up about it now. How misconceptions and implicit biases harm multiply marginalized autistic people. Autistic women, non-binary people, people of color are all underrepresented in media and in autistic studies. Professionals who diagnose autism hold these implicit biases, racism, sexism, etc., and they will deny people their rightful diagnosis. On top of that, the economic privilege you need just in order to access these professionals in the first place. For so many people, access to professional diagnosis is just not attainable. If you stand for racial justice, you must hold space for the self-diagnosed in the disability community. You cannot honestly look at the statistics of those who are denied care and respect in medical settings and think that diagnoses are easily accessed by the marginalized. The term self-diagnosis might make some folks totally shut down, but I think it's really important that you learn about why it happens. It really comes out of necessity and survival for many. And it's not a decision that people should take lightly. we don't live in a world where self-diagnosis is unnecessary. And that should be our real focus, on correcting the injustice, not denying people life-saving resources while we wait for the justice to come. The lack of research and lack of authentic and diverse representation in media leaves a large amount of autistic people misunderstood because people have accepted stereotypes as their checklist for what autism is and what it looks like. It also makes it difficult for people to even recognize autistic traits within themselves in order to seek diagnosis, accommodations, and community. On my channel, I shared my long, expensive, and traumatizing process of being diagnosed with EDS. And I was so lucky and privileged for many reasons, down to the fact that I have a rare type that was diagnosable through blood tests. If I didn't, I might have never been diagnosed, because no doctor I encountered throughout all those years, all that money spent, all that trauma, were able or willing to clinically diagnose me. But the difficulty of that process didn't turn me into a gatekeeper. It made me a believer. Professional diagnoses is a huge, huge privilege that some people may never get. But it doesn't make them any less disabled. The injustices by the systems that exist should not prohibit them from community, solidarity, and care. How I feel best supported by others. Gosh, supportive friends and supportive people in general are just the best. Everyone's support needs will be different, of course, but here are some things that come to mind. Something that has hurt me a lot in the past is people assuming my confusion with something is some kind of unfunny joke. And I'll get comments like, "Don't play dumb," and they will totally shut me out. When a simple rephrasing or a different analogy can go a long way, or simply asking, "Which part are you having trouble with? Maybe I'll explain it in a different way." Okay. I have to ask for that kind of clarification all the time. I struggle with the sarcasm of others a lot. So I always have to ask if folks are being literal when they speak for clarification. And I try to use words like literally, figuratively, metaphorically, whatever, to clarify my intentions as best I can. Oh my gosh, here's another one. I love trying new foods, but I have horrible sensory responses to surprising textures. So I need clear explanations of what kind of texture the food will be. I love it when my friends warn me without having to ask because they are so used to it by now. I'm also sensitive to textures of certain fabrics, but that's something I typically handle on my own. Planning! Things like schedules and maps and descriptions of what's to come really help me with processing and navigating events. Like when I go to convention, I try to go a day early just to map out the space so I don't get lost, so I don't get confused. So it really helps when all of that is laid out for me as well. Personally, it really helps when my friends give me verbal positive affirmations and when they reach out to me first. Because I deal with a lot of intrusive thoughts about my social skills and my social standing with people, and whether I can really trust the people that I surround myself with, if they really enjoy my company, if they genuinely like me, or if they find me annoying and they're just being polite. I'm working on it in therapy, I promise. I'm grateful to have friends that really support that need, and they let me know that they love me often. They're also understanding if I'm not making eye contact while they speak, if I stim in front of them, when I info dump, when I don't understand things or struggle with my words, when the exhaustion of masking gets to me and my face and my voice turn flat. They've shown me that these things don't scare them away, and it has helped with some of the internalized ableism, and they also definitely affirm me and help with the imposter syndrome aspect of it as well. I definitely want to talk about this so much more. I want to share my experiences with you and how my brain works. Maybe I'll do a Q&A. You can leave questions in the comments if that's something you're interested in. I'm sharing all of this because I really hope that if anyone has similar experiences and is considering that they might be some form of neurodivergent, that they feel encouraged to look into learning about themselves and going on a journey of self-discovery, learn how to be kinder to themselves, how to set boundaries, create accessibility in their lives, and find their communities. I think everyone deserves that. I love you all. We will definitely be chatting very soon. I hope. And I will see you eventually. Bye.